Let's get right to our top story, the expanding outbreak of the deadly coronavirus. Look at the map. What started in China has now spread to Europe, Australia, and the United States.
Here's what we know as we come on the air. There is now one more confirmed case in the U.S., bringing the total to 3. In China, where the outbreak started, the total number of those sickened rose overnight to 2,000. 56 people have died.
And we can now confirm that the U.S. State Department is evacuating staff from the consulate in Wuhan, China. Ground zero for the outbreak. ABC's Ian Pannell is covering it all for us from Hong Kong. Ian, good morning to you.
That's right, lots to bring you up to date with. Growing numbers infected, a new warning about how contagious this could be, and the American family trapped in the middle of this crisis.
This morning, another American diagnosed with a potentially deadly coronavirus. The patient in Southern California is the third to be diagnosed with the new pneumonia-like virus in the US. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention confirming they'd been to the Chinese city of Wuhan, the epicenter of the outbreak, and tested positive for the virus overnight. The patient's in isolation and said to be in good condition, but officials warning more people will likely become infected. This as the outbreak escalates yet again. There are now 15 countries and territories worldwide with cases. This morning, Chinese health officials saying more than 2,000 are now infected there and 56 have died. The Chinese health commissioner now warning the source of the infection still unknown. The harmfulness of the coronavirus to people of different ages is now changing. And most worryingly, indications the virus is becoming increasingly contagious. Over 1,300 more medics have been flown to the epicenter Wuhan, where officials are scrambling to build 3 new emergency hospitals in a matter of days. These exclusive images, filmed for ABC News from inside the city, show a ghost town, with signs warning people to wear masks fluttering in the wind. Some shoppers take the risk to stock up on desperately needed supplies. But there are still around 1,000 US citizens stranded in the Wuhan area. Now the State Department is scrambling to evacuate some of them, but it appears so far the space to get people out is limited. We spoke to one American family trapped in a city over 200 miles from Wuhan. The Stockstills from Rhode Island were visiting family for the new year to introduce baby Maxwell to his grandparents when the infection broke out.
We're scared, and there's little guilt involved from putting him in this situation, having him travel abroad at such a young age. There's a lot of guilt involved there.
Well, as you'd expect, Patrick and his wife Ping are desperate to get their kids out, but they're also afraid that even if space opens up on one of those Mercy missions, they won't be allowed to travel on the roads to get to the airport. Dan?
And Ian, a particularly worrisome development. Chinese officials are now saying this virus is infection even in its incubation period before any symptoms show.
Yeah, that's right, and that's likely to worry many. Remember the deadly SARS and Ebola outbreaks that killed hundreds in Asia and Africa. Well, in those cases, a person was only deemed infectious when those symptoms appeared. Now, scientists, this is just what the Chinese are saying, still needs to be verified. The scientists in China are saying that people could be infectious without any symptoms. And of course, that could make it much harder to detect and control. Dan?
Yeah, very problematic if true. Ian Pannell, thank you very much.
The grim search for survivors overseas after a deadly and powerful earthquake in eastern Turkey. The magnitude 6.7 quake destroying buildings, sending residents running into the streets. And in the shadow of that rising death toll, moments of miracle rescues. ABC's Julia McFarland reports.
Tonight, teams in eastern Turkey racing to rescue survivors still buried in the rubble. This young girl injured and trapped, a worker cradling her in his arms as she lets out a cry, a team miraculously pulling her out of the wreckage. And after a grueling 17 hours trapped in debris, an elderly woman finally pulled to safety in front of an anxious crowd. She had managed to contact rescue workers on her cell phone, telling them where she was trapped. The death toll climbing tonight to at least 29, with more than 1,000 injured after the deadly 6.7 magnitude quake struck just before 9 p.m. last night. The moment caught on camera during the evening news. The damage leaving thousands homeless. This man says he could not go home to his village and that families had spent the night gathered around a fire, covered in blankets. Turkey frequently suffers quakes because it sits on a fault line, but this one was especially powerful. Hundreds of aftershocks were felt, some as far as Iran and Syria. Tonight, the search for survivors continues. Tom?
Julia McFarland with those incredible images of those rescues. Julia, thank you.
Collapsed buildings are not the only danger. The quake also sparked a fire on the roof of this house. Authorities are warning residents not to return to damaged buildings because of the risk of further aftershocks. It will likely be days before the full extent of the damage is known. But thousands of people already know that they have no home to return to.
Jesus is coming.